Stella. Good morning, friends. Welcome to my end of the month wrap up, my very first knit and chat. I have my caramel coffee, caramel cold brew, and a new project that I'm starting with this deliciously fluffy yarn. I am probably gonna make a blanket. I don't know. I have a couple of different colors in this. I have this and then I have this gorgeous blue color that I'm probably going to alternate back and forth. I just thought it would be a really great excuse to actually get some of my work done on my project and also update you guys on my life and how I've been doing this month. So go ahead and get settled in, grab a nice cup of coffee or tea, and let's get started. So it's June and Pride Month, and if you guys saw my TBR for the month, was so excited for it to be Pride Month. Had really big plans and hopes for this month, and some of those things came true, but for the most part, I was kind of on the struggle bus this month, unfortunately. So let's start with the good. I went to a Lord Huron concert with my friend Oliver, who I mentioned in my last video, and it was absolutely amazing. We had a wonderful, amazing time. It was the first time in a long time that I have felt like I was in a space that was safe for queer people, because we were looking around and there was just like gay people everywhere and rainbows everywhere, and I kind of had a moment where I was like, wow, I've missed this. I live in a very small town, a town that is not kind to gay people and queer people in general. It really hit home hard this month that I'm not sure how much longer I want to live in the city that I'm in right now, where I don't have connections to like an actual queer community. There's no events for queer people, and the general feeling towards gay people is negative. And it's hard. It's hard to live in a space like that. And I ran into some really hard things with my family this month, centered around my being a homosexual and their religious views about that, and it was rough. It was really rough coming to terms with that and trying to figure out what that meant for my relationship with them, because I'm very, very close with them. And so facing that this month was very difficult and isolating and frustrating and heartbreaking. For a long time this month, I was kind of in like a depressive anxiety spiral and didn't actually start reading until June 17th. But once I did start reading, I read a lot. So I do have a lot to update you guys on. So after the Lord Huron concert, I went to my younger sister's graduation in Seattle, Washington, and we had a really amazing time. It was so wonderful, and I'm very, very proud of her.
Always a pineapple.
Yeah, I think this might be my new favorite hotel. Pineapples are great. So that was very busy. And then I got back and finished off my first year as a second grade teacher. I taught fourth grade before this, and I have definitely found where I love to teach. I love teaching second graders, and so it was a bittersweet kind of ending. I went to Pride with my two friends who are non-binary. I ended up being there for maybe 20 minutes, and then the rain poured down. I have not been so wet in a really long time. No pun intended, but also true. It was a huge thunderstorm. We were soaked to the skin and we had to leave early. Everything got shut down. That was a little bit disappointing, but then we spent the afternoon together and just being with my friends who I don't get to see very often because they live far away was really nice. Despite everything, despite the homophobia that I'm struggling with and despite the feelings of isolation, Pride Month wasn't terrible. I started therapy, which is good. I have been spending a lot of time with my kitties. So that's basically what I've been doing. Let's move on to the books that I read this month. At the beginning of June, I read an audiobook called Leather and Lace. It was a series of short stories about these women who are on a roller derby team, their experiences with love, I guess. And in the moment, I really enjoyed them. I was surprised by how invested I was in the characters, even though they were short stories, and that is kind of rare for me. I have a hard time reading short stories and actually feeling invested in the story, but I really did enjoy it while I was reading it. I thought it was super believable. I thought it was really fun and unique while I was reading it, and then by the end of the month, I don't really remember much about them. I feel like it's a fun short thing to listen to if you have nothing else to listen to, and I would recommend it, but I just don't feel like it's super memorable, and I really couldn't tell you the plot line of any of the stories that I read. Take that as you will. I ended up giving the entire book a 3 stars, which is, fine, but not amazing. And then after that, I really struggled to read for a really long time. I had a hard time pulling myself out of the funk with work and with the family stuff that was happening. Finally, I decided that I was going to have to go off of my TBR. So I pulled a random ebook from Scribd and started reading The Charm Offensive. Oh my gosh, guys. I fell head over heels into this story and read it in the span of probably 2 days, which is pretty good because it was during the time of all the family stuff and I was spending a lot of time with them and I was kind of using it as an escapism kind of read. But oh my gosh, I became so obsessed with this story. It was so good. The mental health representation in that book is on point with the panic attacks and the depression and the OCD representation. Something I really appreciated about it was that even though there was a lot of miscommunication, it wasn't like willful. Sometimes when I read books and there's miscommunication and they're refusing to communicate well with each other, I just get really frustrated because I'm like, come on guys, you're adults, you can do this. But it didn't feel like that when I was reading this book. There was some miscommunication, but at the same time, they communicated really well with each other. And I really appreciated that. That will usually send a romance like higher in my rating when they have good adult communication. And it was just so wholesome overall. So if you haven't read this book before, I would highly recommend it. It is a gay romance and it is centered on a straight romance dating show, similar to like The Bachelor, actually pretty much identical to The Bachelor. So if you're interested in dating shows and stuff, it's kind of interesting because there's a commentary on those shows and whether they are sincere or not, which was really interesting to read as well. Yeah, I gave it a 5 stars. I thought it was wonderful and amazing. The next book I read, I tried to read, called Chef's Kiss. And it is the story of a woman who is a chef and works for a small magazine that posts recipes and things for people. She's the chef who creates new recipes, essentially. Their business is starting to go under and they're having to try and move into the technological world and start making YouTube videos about it. There's a new chef manager of the kitchen that she works in who has the complete opposite personality as her. This story is about a woman who is incredibly uptight with a stick up her butt, like extreme, kind of an extreme version of that character, and then a non-binary person who comes and places a bombshell in her life because this non-binary person is incredibly loud and outgoing and carefree to another extreme. And so we have these two really extreme personalities that are pulling at each other, and I'm assuming by the end of the book that they balance each other out and have a romance. I wanted to get to that point, but I ended up DNFing the book because I was interested in the romance, but I felt like the characterizations of those two opposite characters characters were just too extreme and it didn't feel believable to me. I found myself getting really bored because they were getting bogged down in the businesses dying and they're trying to create these YouTube videos that are terrible, and the main character is super awkward and uptight and doesn't know how to create a YouTube video that's relatable to her audience. And I don't know, I got really bored. So I DNF'd that one because I didn't want to get stuck on a story that just wasn't doing it for me. So I was looking for something that I knew I was gonna love, and boy howdy did I find my newest favorite book of the year so far, and that book was Gear Breakers. I knew it was going to be. This was a book that I put on my TBR that I absolutely knew I was going to love. It has everything that I am super nerdy about, like science fiction, lesbian romance, yes please. And I was completely blown away by this story. I sat and I read it in one 8-hour sitting, which I love doing, but I don't do very often unless I really love that book. Pacific Rim and Voltron, kids show if you've seen it, and Star Trek and like a dystopian novel all mixed into one, and somehow, even though it pulls on all of those tropes, it created something that is completely unique. Like I've never read anything like it before. It sucked me in, guys. It sucked me in. I will say that it's not for everybody because it's supposed to be a young adult. However, it is incredibly brutal, graphic, and deals with heavy, dark content. So lots and lots of trigger warnings for this series, trigger warnings for self-harm, for depression, for anxiety, extended torture scenes, the realities of war, murder and the death of loved ones, gray morality of what a person is willing to do in order to reach an end goal as far as winning a war on both sides, and the horrible acts that people will commit on both sides of a war in order to fight for things that they believe in and the people that they love, and how quickly it becomes something that is terrible for everybody. It's dark. It's really dark. I read the first one, immediately ordered the second one, and then binge read the second one all night last night and finished it at 1 a.m, and I was sobbing by the end of it. Also, I mean, both books are just incredibly dark, but there's also a beautiful love story, lesbian love story, an enemies to lovers story, a found family story. The book is really about how love holds people together when the whole rest of the world is just going to shit. And it's not just romantic love. Like the exploration of friendship love and family love is written so beautifully, and it's written so wisely, like as if this person, the author, had experienced this themselves. And I don't know how they came up with this, because it truly is remarkable. It's a remarkable book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. I gave both of them 5 stars, and they are my top favorite books of the year that I've read so far. So I cannot recommend them enough. However, I do recommend it with a caveat of take care of yourself when you're going into it, because there's a lot of triggers in there that could set a lot of people off. So be mindful of that. Okay, this is where I'm at so far. It's pretty long. Probably long enough to start going back the other direction now. So I read Gear Breakers, and while I was waiting for the second book to come to me, because I had to order it online, I picked another audiobook. And I was looking through Scribd, and I was trying to find a representation that I hadn't done yet. I was looking and finally found a book that said it had a trans main character, and I was like, oh great, perfect. It's exactly what I'm looking for. So I started reading The Meet Cute Diary. It's a YA, something that I've realized about a lot of queer books that are coming out, as they're really centered towards young adults, which I think is amazing, because that's the time in a person's life most often where you're struggling with the reality of your sexuality or your gender or whatever it is, and you need that representation to see that reflected back at you in the books and the shows and the things that you're consuming at that age. And so I think it's amazing that those things are out there. But I'm finding that as much as I enjoy reading about young people falling in love and coming to terms with their own sexuality and gender, whatever it is, I find that I really gravitate more as an adult to more adult books. So I think I'm going to try and do that from now on. However, The Meet Cute Diary was really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I felt like the trans rep was really tasteful. There was a lot of commentary on figuring out your pronouns and what feels right for you. A storyline that was talking about the bullying that people experience when they come out in school a lot of the time, and the negative mental health effects that can trigger. And so trigger warnings again for bullying, homophobia, self-harm, those kinds of things as well. And I think that's a common theme in so many queer novels, which is kind of sad. But, you know, the reality the reality of our lives. Would you stop eating my plant? Stop it. Move. I'm trying to get a cute shot of her and she's over there destroying my plant. Anyway, so yeah, I was super invested in the characters. I thought the character development was really good. I really liked the kind of twisty, turny ways that the story was taking place and how the relationships were developing, the friendships in there as well. So it wasn't only about romantic relationships again, which I prefer. I would like to have more than just the focus being the romantic relationship in a romance story like that. The questioning of sexuality, the questioning of gender identity, I feel like that was all explored really tastefully and honestly. So I did appreciate that about it. I did find the ending quite unsatisfying. I feel like there were loose ends that were never really tied together. Elements of the plot, elements of the character development that I wish had been explored more thoroughly at the end of the story. And so for that reason, I was kind of leaning between a 3 and a 4 star, but because of the quality of the exploration of the identity and also just because of the investment I felt in the characters and the story itself, I decided to give it a 4 stars instead. I started reading one other book that I have not finished yet, so I will reserve my judgment and review until I finish reading that story. I made some headway on my project. I'm starting to go back the other direction, but I'm finding I haven't ever crocheted with this yarn before and it's really thick. And so it might be a little bit difficult for me to find my stitches because I'm still a newbie at crocheting. I've knitted since I was a kid, but crocheting is still new to me. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of chill chat video with me. I'd like to continue doing these every month and then I'll show you the progress of my project as I go. Thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you would like to. Until next time, take care.